Welcome to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and I'm once again joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. It doesn't seem like we weren't on all that long ago. It was a little more than 24 hours ago. But, Stone, how are you this evening?
I was gonna say it feels like 5 hours ago, but I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Can't complain. People stop listening. Plus, I look like a U-boat commander tonight in my New England Football Journal attire. So I've got that going for me. Now, before we start the conversation, we've got plenty to talk about tonight. I do want to remind you that if you are in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, purchase your first home or refinance, then you need to give Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, Herb has the knowledge and the know-how to help you navigate through what can be a challenging process if you don't have experience on your side. If you want that experience on your side, then get in touch with Herb Devine. He is going to help make the process easy for you, and he's going to allow you to get into your next home without any of the stress that comes with the process. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846, or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And of course, we'd like to extend our congratulations to Coach Devine. He is the head football coach of the Scituate Sailors, who defeated Westerly High School on Friday night at home in a barn burner, 33-29. Westerly's a good football program. And after talking to Coach Devine, he said, hey, we didn't know a lot about these guys going into it, but the quarterback, to your point, is the real deal. And we found out a lot about ourselves. So congratulations to Coach Devine and the Sailors on starting the season off with a win. They're 1-0. They play rival Duxbury this week. We'll talk some more high school football later on in this show. Now, I do want to also remind you that feel free to join the conversation. You are watching us live on our YouTube page, Facebook, X, and Twitch. So feel free to jump in and join the conversation at any time. We would love to hear from you. We had a great turnout yesterday after the Patriots game on the Patriots Pulse post-game show. We'd love to hear from you guys again tonight. Again, we're going to talk Patriots. We're going to talk college. We're going to talk high school. So anything you want to talk about, jump on and let's talk some ball. Let's start there with the Patriots. Stone, obviously, we broke it down yesterday, me, you, and John Lyons on the aforementioned Patriots Pulse post-game show. Look, we don't necessarily need to relitigate the game. A lot was said today. You were up there for Mike Vrabel's press availability. He also did his weekly rounds on the radio with WEEI. Frustrating loss. The end of the game, at the end of the day, this is a game they could have won, and they let it slip away. And I think it's three reasons why they let it slip away. One, I don't think that Drake May played particularly well despite his stat line. Two, they couldn't run the football, only rushed for 60 yards. And three, they gave up 9 pass plays of over 20 yards. It's a recipe for failure as far as I'm concerned. You can't win in football if your quarterback is inconsistent, if you can't run the ball and you're giving up big plays. That's what ultimately did them in. I asked you and John this question yesterday, and I kind of want to come back to it. Does this loss change your view of this football team? Not so much in terms of wins and losses, but how you look at this team now. Do you look at this team differently? A lot of people today are saying that it's business as usual. They look just as bad as they have the last couple of years. They're not going to be as good as we thought. Are you ready? Are you off the bandwagon completely? Or are you ready to throw the proverbial baby or the bathwater and the baby out or whatever the hell the expression is?
No, not yet. It's too early. But, and you know this, I said it yesterday, I'm starting to worry about Drake May. How can you not? It looked too similar to last year. Like this was supposed to all look different. And I know it's all brand new. I know it's a new OC. I know it's a new offense, new head coach, the whole thing. He looked like a rookie yesterday, at times. So I'm a little worried about him. And I know you're sort of 50-50, I think, on in terms of being worried about him and giving it more time. But my biggest takeaway from Vrabel today was he was asked by Phil Perry if there's too much on Drake's plate, and he said, "Yeah, we need to evaluate that." So already, has he been given too much? And if that's the case, we're in week 1, and he's been dealing with the Josh Patino's offense for what? Let's call it 4 months now. Since OTAs probably. So I don't love hearing that either. But to answer your question, no, it's too early. I still think he's really talented, but the mental part that was so important around here when Brady was here, I just don't know if he's. And I'm not calling him dumb. This sounds bad, and I don't mean it to sound bad, but I just don't know if he can handle this offense. But again, it's still very, very early.
Yeah, I don't buy any of that. I think he can handle this offense. This offense is actually not very complicated. There are other
Yeah, you've said
systems that
that
are
for a
more
while too.
complicated. That there are a lot of other systems that are more complicated than this offense. So I don't think he has too much on his plate. Of course, they're going to evaluate it. Every coaching staff at every level of football evaluates how much they put in, and did they put in too much, and do they need to take something out? That's part of the game planning process on a week to week basis. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't buy that notion that there's too much on his plate. And Vrabel said the right thing, that they're going to look into it and they're going to see whether or not they are in fact putting too much on his plate. But here's the reality: you're not just putting too much on his plate; you're putting too much on everybody else's plate. So if in fact that is the case, then they have to have a big picture view here. It's not just Drake May. I think at the end of the day, he really has some bad habits that I think he needs to fix. I think his pocket awareness needs work. I think his timing and his anticipation needs work. I think he can be very inconsistent in terms of his delivery and putting the ball where it needs to be. I still think that a lot of his problems are fundamental. It's technical stuff. It's stuff that can be fixed, but it's stuff that ultimately he has to get better at for this offense to move forward. He needs to be more consistent. Now, look, whether he's playing for Josh McDaniels, Alex Van Pelt, or anyone else, at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot on your plate in a weekly game plan in the NFL. That's just the fact of life. You're going to go into a game with upwards of 500 plays. So he's got to be ready for that. Okay. That's life as a starting quarterback in this league. So this idea that, now, did they put too much on his plate? Is he not? Are they not, giving him a chance to learn it and absorb it and get good at certain things? I think that's fodder for us to debate. I don't think it's reality. Because remember, what can we compare this to? What is our reference point here? Mac Jones, 2021. Mac Jones didn't seem to have much of a problem with this offense. He seemed to pick it up pretty quickly, and he excelled in it as a rookie. So the idea that Drake May in his first year in this system is already overwhelmed or there's too much volume there, I call bullshit. I don't buy that at all.
Just on the Alabama thing, or the Mac Jones thing, I should say, wouldn't it be slightly easier coming from that system over to the Patriots one? Compared to what he was in, well, compared to what Drake was in North Carolina.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to point to that and say there's some similarities there because of the Saban Belichick connection and Bill O'Brien being the OC there at Alabama, and he brought in some of those Patriot concepts. Some of those concepts were obviously utilized there even after O'Brien left. But no, I think that the hardest thing for me is he's got to play under center more, something he didn't do at North Carolina. But again, I think this whole under center versus shotgun thing with quarterbacks is getting old now because football is turning again. Philosophically, quarterbacks are starting to play more under center at the high school and collegiate level. So it's not all spread. So I think it's a real reach to say that there's too much on his plate. Of course, Vrabel, the offensive staff, they're going to do their due diligence. They're going to look into it, but I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I think it's more fundamental with him. He needs to clean things up fundamentally. I think we saw this in training camp, man, and I've said this now for a while. He had some spots in training camp where he was bad. He was missing throws. He was missing throws at Skelly. He was missing throws in team period. For me, what we saw yesterday with some of those missed throws, we've been seeing that now for the past 5 weeks plus in training camp. So I don't, this idea that somehow he's got too much on his plate and they need to scale it down and make the game easier for him. Again, I don't buy that. Ken Matthias joins the show after you guys covering the game in person. How was the vibes heading into the game and after it? Should have the Patriots had a better game plan against Pete Carroll and the Raiders? I can't speak to the vibes. You were in the locker room last week prior to the game. Certainly the vibes after the game, there was disappointment there. You lost. Of course, that's going to be the vibe in the locker room after the game. I think there was also a sense of missed opportunity. They had an opportunity to win the game, and they dropped the ball. As far as the game plan is concerned, I mean, look, it's easy to hindsight's always 2020, right? It's easy to question the game plan now. But going into it, when you look at this Raiders team on paper, specifically their defense, if you could block up Max Crosby, the rest of that pass rush is not that great, and that secondary is not that great. So I probably would have leaned 55-45 pass to run in my game plan against Las Vegas because I would have wanted to attack where I think they're weakest, and that's in the back seven. Now, again, I think that Vegas did a really good job up front of dominating the line of scrimmage and limiting the Patriots' running game, and I credit them for the Patriots' inability to run the ball. But as far as them throwing the ball, I was okay with it. Look, you're not going to turn this kid into a franchise quarterback if he's handing the ball off or running around, picking up 8 to 10 yards and sliding. He needs to learn to play from the pocket. I'm okay with them throwing.
Yeah, I'll start with the second one first. They had two different chances to add to that lead before halftime. So I think the game plan was fine. They were moving the ball at times. He was just killing momentum by missing throws. And then you're in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, whatever, and you're playing from behind. So I'm with you there. I thought game planning was fine. They just didn't execute very well, and Drake really killed a lot of those drives, especially early in the game. Vibes wise, around the stadium yesterday, I get there early. You know that I was there about 9:30. Tailgates were already firing. Like it was, even with the weather, people were ready to go. But and you've been there throughout the last 4 or 5 years. Post game, it felt very similar. It was down, dejected. Guys get out of that locker room very quickly. Yesterday, it was empty by the time I went in there. So probably what, a half hour, 45 minutes after the game. So it was very similar to last year, which I didn't like. But overall, again, going in, vibes are great, as you'd expect for a season opener. But we'll see how they are next week. If they lose to Miami, it'll be interesting to see what that building is like that week leading into the Pittsburgh game.
Well, you lost. I mean,
Yeah, right.
what do we expect? They lost. At the end of the day, they're not going to be playing music. They're not going to be happy-go-lucky. They're not just going to brush it off. You lost. I don't care what level of football you play or coach in. A loss is a loss, and goes for any sport. Okay? I mean, when you lose, it sucks. It's depressing. People are down. They don't want to be around. They want to get out of there. They want to flush it out of their system and move on to the next week. And the hard thing with football is it's not baseball. You're not playing 5 times a week, okay, or 6 times a week. It's not hockey or basketball where you're playing 3 or 4 times a week. The NFL is a much different animal. You lose this game, now you got to wait until the following Sunday to make amends. It stews for an entire week, even though you're, quote, moving on. As players, as coaches, you're thinking about it. It stays with you. And again, if you lose to an opponent that you're only playing once during the season, you're going to have to wait again anywhere from the next year to upwards of 4 to 8 years to play that opponent again, depending on who it is. So a loss is a loss to a degree, but when you lose, it really affects you. You put a lot of time and effort into it in football. Losses, I think, probably sting a little bit more than they do in baseball because, again, yeah, you're putting effort in baseball, but you're going to play the next day. You can win and kind of, rinse that losing taste out of your mouth. It's hard to do in football. Good friend of the show, Bill Vaughn, checks in. I spent my weekend watching UMass, then going to the Pats game on the only rainy day we've had here in a month. I'm putting in for combat pay. As you should, Bill. You 100% should put in for combat pay. You deserve a Medal of Honor for putting up with this weekend, specifically the UMass loss. We're going to get to that here in a few minutes. Ken Matthias is back. He's joining us once again. Will yesterday's loss, as you hit mid to late season, be a huge factor if the Pats are a playoff bubble team or on the outside looking in? Yeah, absolutely, because it starts to factor into the win-loss record within the conference. So, yes, even though it's week 1, this loss could have ramifications down the road.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a tiebreaker with the Raiders, I'd be shocked if they're in that conversation too. But yeah, like you said, you said it all right there. Yes, it will.
Yeah. And it's the NFL. It wouldn't shock me if either one of these teams were in the conversation. That's the beauty of this league, that it's a quick turnaround league. It still is. Even though a lot of people will say, well, there isn't as much parity in the league now as there used to be. That is true. But I think ultimately it's still a relatively quick turnaround league. Now, of course, the Patriots are heading down to Miami for a week 2 showdown against the rival Miami Dolphins. Of course, as we know, Miami has been a house of horrors for the Patriots through the years. They're coming off a 33-8 loss to the Indianapolis Colts yesterday. They got completely dog walked. That game was not competitive at all. Quite frankly, the Dolphins suck. In my opinion, this is a game the Patriots should win. Mike McDaniel is not only on the hot seat, it's burning a hole through his sweatpants. I think at the end of the day, if the Patriots lose this game, in my opinion, Stone, we might want to reenact that scene in Airplane where everybody's panicking that the plane's going to crash, because we might be heading in that direction. This may end up being a lost season indeed. This is a winnable game. And in many ways, the Patriots can make amends for yesterday if they go down there, take care of business, win, get to 500 with a 1-1 record.
Yeah, post game, I called it must win yesterday. It's only week 2, but for all the reasons you said, Miami's hurting just as bad as you are. But there is one thing. You call it a house of horrors down there, and I've heard that phrase my entire life. For whatever reason, it's just sort of been accepted that whenever the Patriots go to Miami in September or October in particular, because if you remember right, there's been, let's call it the last decade or so, the 90s and 2000s, it was always Miami here in September. Um, excuse me, Patriots there in September, Miami down, or Miami comes up here when it's cold. So you have, the opposites. Excuse me, we have the Tom Brady to Troy Brown, that deep ball in double overtime, that lasting image. Teddy Bruschi throwing the snow in the air when they came up here late in the season. Excuse me, you don't have those images the way the schedule has been configured the last, again, 10 years or so. It's been flipped. So you're heading back down there now. And I asked a few players today, is Miami really, is it that bad? Like, yes, it's hot. I know Florida is a different heat, but I started thinking, like, if we just accepted that when the schedule comes out, it's an automatic loss or an automatic difficult game just because it's South Florida in September. So I asked 3 players today, Milton Williams, Marcus Jones, and Antonio Gibson. They've all been in the league for a while. I figured they'd have good perspective, and they all said, yeah. They all said it's a real thing, which adds another layer to this week. Because mentally, and we talked about this yesterday, Gillette Stadium used to be a hard place to play. Like, teams came in here, and there was almost an automatic loss because of that mystique, right? So now when you go down to South Florida, I feel like it's not talked about enough. Miami sort of has a sneaky home field advantage that may be underrated. So you're
I don't
playing
think it is. I think you're right. They have a home field advantage because, especially this time of year, the
yeah.
heat and the humidity are a factor. They absolutely have a home field advantage, just like the Buffalo Bills
Mhm.
and the Green Bay Packers have a home field advantage later on in the season.
Which it's
It
funny.
hasn't helped the Packers much in recent years, but
No, it's
nonetheless, you can categorize it as an advantage.
no, it's funny you bring that up because I mentioned Arrowhead as a real home field advantage. Mile High, right? Always a home field advantage. We've always heard how hard it is to play there. Lambeau, hard place to play. But Miami doesn't get talked about that much. Like, we mentioned, yeah, it's gonna
Well,
be
because
hot.
I don't think it's a hard place to play. It's a hard place to play because of the heat and humidity. It's not a
Yeah,
hard place to play because of the fans and
yeah.
the atmosphere.
No, exactly. So, but I was curious, just sort of if players really take it that, if they really do think about it that much, because preparation during the week is hard enough. You're adding an extra layer of preparation when you have to go and play in conditions like that. So, I'm slightly concerned, as most people are when they go to Miami, but they can't lose this game. They can't go to 0-2 in this new era when everything was supposed to be different. So I'm with you. I am worried if Christian Gonzalez doesn't play, because you still have to deal with the speed of Miami. But I just don't see how Miami really slows the Patriots down unless they hurt themselves like they did yesterday. I think the Patriots can score. It's just they didn't show they could score yesterday consistently. I still think they're good enough on offense, particularly at receiver. Um, I'm thinking like 2017 in this game. And again, I know it's not a lot of points, But I think this defense is good enough to hold Miami to that. But that's if Christian plays. If he doesn't, I think you're looking at a shootout.
Yeah, I mean, I think a 24-17, 20-17 score is
Yeah.
probably a pretty safe bet. The Patriots and the Dolphins, despite Miami's success at home against the Patriots in recent years, they tend to play tight games, and they're not blowout games on either end. So I suspect that this game will be another one of those types of games. Ken checks back in. Are you both surprised that Geno Smith walked into Gillette and won back-to-back seasons? No, I'm not. Look, I think Geno Smith is a serviceable starter in this league. If you were to rank him, you probably can make the argument he's a top 15 guy. But in my opinion, I'm not surprised because he's good enough to be a starter in this league. And if you protect him and the scheme is good, and he's playing for Chip Kelly, so you know the scheme's going to be good. If the scheme is good, he's going to produce. He throws for 362 yesterday. So to answer your question, Ken, no, I'm not surprised at all that he's coming here in back-to-back years and won. He's played in good systems that play to his strengths. He's got good skill around him, and he knows how to get him the ball.
Not at all. We talked about him last week. People forgot what he did last year. So that wasn't a surprise. Yesterday, the truck plays were obviously a surprise. But no, not at all. He's found longevity in a league that's hard to find longevity in. So no, not at all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Ken checks back in. Heading into week 2 after Miami getting blown out by the Colts yesterday, Patriots should have the upper hand, although Tua is undefeated against New England. Big key heading into this matchup will be the health of Christian Gonzalez and if he can play. Yes, we agree. I agree. I mean, because look, you have to take on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they're still a pretty dynamic duo that can make big plays and change the complexion of a game. So 100%, you need a healthy Christian Gonzalez in this game. Without him, as we saw yesterday, again, they completed 9 plays of over 20 yards. So I think it's fair to say they missed Christian Gonzalez yesterday. Miami's going to replicate that feat if you don't get Gonzalez back this week. They need him back, especially to match up against Tyreek. Boston Sports Archive checks in. Thanks for checking in again. We appreciate it. If the offense looks better or worse in Miami, I'm afraid the pressure will get to May for the rest of the season. I think that that's a valid point. I think if he struggles on Sunday, you're going to start to hear the chirping, and the fans are going to get restless, and the media is going to start getting a little chirpy about May and his performance. You're already hearing it. There's already questions as to whether or not he's consistent enough to be a franchise quarterback. A lot of people didn't pull any punches, including myself, putting a lot of that loss yesterday on him. If he comes out and he has a similar performance to yesterday and they lose on Sunday to the Dolphins, I think you're going to start to hear murmurs of people questioning whether or not he could be the face of the franchise. He was a nice story last year in a bad situation. But, Kevin, you've talked about this, and I agree with you. I don't think that that's going to fly this time around. I think people are they're going to be willing to give Vrabel the benefit of the doubt because he's Mike Vrabel. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots. He's a Patriot legend, but they're not going to give Drake May or even to a degree Josh McDaniels that same benefit of the doubt, but especially May. I feel if he struggles on Sunday and they lose, he's going to start hearing it.
Especially his demeanor. I talked about it last night, and I probably didn't word it the way I wanted to, but you see in the background there with the statue of Tom Brady. We were spoiled because we had the ultimate killer. We saw what that killer mentality looked like for 20 years. And again, I talked about this last night. He's not Mac Jones, right? Like, I think his upbringing, competing with his brothers and being in a sports-filled household, I think that helps him. But there's a certain level of, this is not a word, but killerness that you need as an NFL quarterback. And we haven't seen it yet. Can we get there? Absolutely. People also need to remember he hasn't played a lot of football, like at this level or the college level. So that probably takes time to develop as well. But yeah, if it looks bad against Miami, the question should start to come up. We're 2 years in now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it will start in earnest, but I think it's still too early. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it
I
again.
agree.
And I was willing yesterday to start the conversation. I made it very clear on the post-game show.
Yeah.
But for me, I still think it's early. It's early. We really can't fully evaluate him until the end of this season. And I mean that because by the end of this season, If he struggles and he's not very good, now you're going into next year with two decisions. One, you need to see how he does because you may need to dip into that 2027 quarterback class if he's not the guy and he doesn't progress. And two, you're going to have to make a decision on picking up his fifth-year option. So, yes, you want to see improvement here. Yes, it'll be frustrating if he doesn't improve, but it might be a little early to start panicking here in regards to whether or not he can be a franchise quarterback. Ken checks back in. Does Josh McDaniels have to dumb down the offense for May? Could the language be too difficult for Drake, or could it be the scheme Josh runs? Again, I'm going to stick to what I said earlier. I don't think it's any of that. I really don't.
So
it's a complicated scheme in many ways, but it's also a simple scheme. I think if we're going to start this bullshit with, and I'm not saying this to you, Ken, I'm not saying you're the problem here, but if we're going to start this bullshit talk now with the scheme, and I heard it all day with some of our contemporaries in this market, just knock it off, people. Just knock it off. I get Phil's question. It's a valid question. I get Vrabel's response. But let's look, it is possible that he's fundamentally flawed and he needs to play better. Let's not sit here and pretend like, what? It's got to be Josh's fault. He needs to water it down. The kid's overwhelmed. He can't play up to his potential because he's thinking too much. Just stop. He doesn't look like a quarterback to me that's overthinking the game or that he's overwhelmed schematically. He would tell you to a man that he's got to be better fundamentally. I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Again, we can sit here and we can talk ourselves into circles that it's McDaniels. You and I have talked about this. John Lyons and I have talked about this. We knew going into this deal with McDaniels back, he was going to become the piñata again if things didn't go well early. Well, break out the stick because he's the whipping boy.
So there's one thing you brought up yesterday that I found interesting, and it sort of piggybacks off of that. You said it's the NFL, and they don't really need to work their game or work the game plan towards him. He needs to be able to adjust to what Josh McDaniels runs. Just elaborate a little bit more on that, because I feel like you always hear, coaches need to design for players, but you feel the opposite?
No, I think that it's important to play to players' strengths, but I also think that in the National Football League, the players have to also adapt to the system. In high school and college, you play to your players' strengths. In the NFL, you use the same approach, but the expectation can't be, okay, we're only going to do what Drake is comfortable with, and that's it. It just doesn't work that way. He's got to be able to play outside his comfort zone. He's got to be able to play within a system. If he can't do that, never mind playing here, he's not going to be able to play anywhere in the National Football League. So, yes, in theory, you should always want to philosophically plan around your talent and playing to their strengths. But in the National Football League, you've also got to be able to go beyond that schematically so that you can get more out of your players. So, yes, I'm sure McDaniels is running things that he's comfortable with. I'm sure he has input in the plan. I'm sure he asks him what he wants, what he doesn't want. But at the end of the day, McDaniels cannot run this offense strictly based on what Drake May is comfortable with. He's got to run a system that works for all the players.
No, I'm glad you clarified, because I was actually thinking about it on the way home last night. I'm like, that doesn't really make sense, but it does. It does.
Yeah, it does. Bill checked back in. May has to be more of a gunslinger and less robotic. I felt yesterday he was trying not to lose. Remember Josh Allen's first couple of years, ordinary at best. Yeah, I agree. He's got to play looser.
Yeah,
and of course the stories are out there about how he gets nervous before games. By the way, that kind of concerns me. I'm not going to lie. But I agree with you, Bill. He's got to loosen up. He's got to play looser. I don't know if I want him playing like Brett Favre and throwing stupid ass interceptions over the middle of the field, but he's definitely got to loosen up. He is a little tight at the beginning of the game. You see it. You saw him once again yesterday. Ken checks back in. Do you guys give in to the Josh Allen and Drake May comparisons? From what is said in some of the media, they want May to be Allen. That would be great, but the kid needs more time to develop. He's not Josh Allen. He's more Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is a better comp for him than Josh Allen. He is not Josh Allen. He is a more athletic version of Justin Herbert. But I think Herbert's more of a comp for him. Allen is a unicorn. Okay. I mean, anybody that knows me in my 25 years of covering the NFL draft, the reason I have any credibility at all is because I've hit on guys like Roethlisberger and Josh Allen and Herbert and Burrow. And at the end of the day, I've also had my fair share of whiffs when it comes to quarterbacks. But to me, Josh Allen was a unicorn. You could see that if he went to the right situation and he was given an opportunity to develop and they fixed his release and he got some mechanical touch ups, that he could develop into a franchise quarterback. And you're seeing it now. I still think Drake May can be a franchise quarterback. I still think he and Jaden Daniels are the two best quarterbacks in this class or the class of 24. I still think he can be a franchise quarterback. I think he's got to work through some stuff fundamentally, but comparing him to Josh Allen, in my opinion, is irresponsible.
Especially not after last night. I mean,
Yeah.
that was what a show. What a
Yeah.
show.
I mean, listen, he's a different dude. And the reality is there were a lot of people that saw him as this big gunslinger that, you know, just threw the ball, had a big time arm, threw the ball all over the place, didn't know where it was going, wasn't fundamentally sound, couldn't play within a system. Well, he's proving people wrong. You are watching the New England Football Show, presented by Mortgage Right. I'm John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. We do want to remind you that if you're in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, purchase your first home or refinance, give our good buddy Herb Devine a call, 781 254 2846. Or you can shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, Herb has the knowledge and the know-how to help you in this process. So give him a call. Again, that number is 781 254 2846. Or you could shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And as always, you are watching/listening to the New England Football Show. This show will become a podcast that you can listen to wherever you consume your podcasts. Let's pivot here and talk some college football. And of course, I'm going to start with Boston College. Heartbreaking overtime loss to Michigan State on Saturday night, 42-40. In a game that, quite frankly, in my opinion, Kevin, I thought they should have won. It's a missed opportunity. They could have won the game. They didn't get it done. After the game, Bill O'Brien was very positive, all things considered. But in my opinion, and I'm not going to sit here and be Mr. Piss on People's Parade, this was a game they needed to win if they were going to establish themselves as being a program that could play in the ACC championship game and potentially compete for the college football playoff. These are games you have to win. These are games, quite frankly, and I'm going way past Bill O'Brien here when I say it, but these are games, quite frankly, Kevin, that this program hasn't won in a long time. They needed to win this one, and it was a missed opportunity.
100%. It's the same thing, the same type of conversation we always have, right? Big spot, national TV, they showed up, but we're talking about a loss. So that's disappointing, obviously, but it's hard not to be encouraged by a lot of things that happened, though. Um, Everyone that knows me knows I'm a Grayson James guy. How can you not like Dylan Lonergan? For a kid that's barely
I
played
don't think
football.
I don't think you can question that decision after
No,
Saturday
you
night.
can't.
Now, he could fall off a cliff here and struggle this week at Stanford, although I doubt it. Stanford sucks. But he could struggle against Cal, he could struggle against Clemson, and we might be having a different conversation. But as of right now, and you and I both had our doubts about that decision. As of right now, you can't argue with that decision. He played lights out on Saturday night. He's been lights out through 2 weeks.
He's barely played any ball whatsoever. And you can speak to this better than I can, but I thought the most impressive part of that entire night was his control at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
In that environment, with little communication available to him, just in terms of the noise and all that stuff, particularly in the red zone, too, checking into plays and getting guys open. I thought that was really impressive. But also, and again, you can speak to this better than I can. I thought Will Willing's offense was very creative. They're scheming guys wide ass open. And
He
again,
did a
that
great
helps.
job.
Yeah. The running game is still a big issue, which is not great given that they're legitimately 6 deep in that running back room if they want to be. So I'd like to see more of that against Stanford, but pass protection has been outstanding. Maybe not outstanding, but a notch below. People were worried about that O line. You don't need to be. Tight end, Jeremiah Franklin, you know this. I never really got him. But man, he's Mr. Reliable. He's all over the place. I think he had 8 catches, 6 catches, whatever it was, but he's dependable as anybody. So I'm still really, really high on that offense. And the receiving core, as you know,
Yeah.
I've been high on, and they all showed
Lewis
up.
Bond, Jaden Skeet, they both had big games. Reed Harris
So
played well.
they can score with anybody. Now, on the other side, you got to tackle better. That
Yeah.
was really surprising
That was their bugaboo.
for a Bill O'Brien team too. So it'll be interesting to see at practice starting tomorrow what they work on. Excuse me, in particular, but and special teams was up and down. Kickoff return was brutal, which O'Brien addressed, and they're going to address it again in practice for sure this week. But your field goal kicker, which is by far the biggest question in camp, Luca Lombardo was outstanding. He was arguably one of your best players of the night, so that's encouraging too. Overall, yeah, you have to win that game if you're going to take that next step. But you're lucky it was not an ACC game. You have another chance in prime time this week, although oddly enough, they're leaving Friday to go to a game in California. But that is what it is. You got to win this one because you have a bye coming up too. So you got to get your rest back. And then after Cal and another game or two, I forget who's after that. Then you start to get to the hard ones. You get to the Clemsons, the Notre Dames, the SMUs. So look, they can compete with anybody if you're going to put up 40 points. But you have to close games out, to your point. I still think they can compete in the ACC. But again, you're going to have to see that kind of offensive performance. Going to have to tackle better. Special teams can't be giving up field position. And you got to be able to close games out. Real quick, would you have gone for 2 that first overtime?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so I was torn. The way I saw it, and you can kind of tell me if I'm wrong. So they were on defense first and won the toss. If they had started on offense and they weren't getting the ball immediately after, I think they would have gone for 2. But because you had the back-to-back possession, I think that's what changed it.
Yeah. I mean, you could go either way in terms of your argument for whether or not to do it, but I don't have a problem with it. Boston Sports Archive joins the show again. Thanks for checking in. We appreciate it. If Michigan State was an ACC opponent, I would be more upset than I am. Hopefully, this offense will let us compete with the big guys in the ACC. Yeah, look, the offense is going to be good, but to Kevin's point, you got to tackle better. That was pathetic on Saturday night. They were missing tackles left and right.
3rd and 8, 3rd
We
and 9,
both
3rd
know
and 10.
Tim Lewis. We've been around him enough now the last couple of years where he's a no-nonsense coach. He's salt of the earth, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But as a football coach, he doesn't have room for mistakes. He doesn't have room for a lack of execution, and he's a firm believer in the fundamentals. And the way they played, especially in the second half defensively, that is not a Tim Lewis coach defense. So I guarantee you this week in practice, tackling will be emphasized. Pursuit angles will be emphasized. Getting to the ball faster. All things that they need to do if they want to have any chance of being successful this season. And again, this was a missed opportunity. By and large, they outplayed Michigan State. But the bottom line is that secondary, which coming into the season we all felt was potentially elite, one of the top secondaries in the ACC, they didn't play well. And as a result, they couldn't defend Nick Marsh. And that was the difference in the game in many ways. Aiden Childs can be very erratic, but when you have a number one receiver like Marsh, it doesn't really matter. He was a tough matchup for the Eagles.
I was going to say Childs is more of a runner than a passer. And he killed them in the open field. But the worst part
it was Childs' play.
Yeah, it's not bad actually for you. It's not one of your worst ones. But he was the
No,
worst part about all of that was it was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. You get off the field, the game changes completely. But overall, I'm with you. But let me ask you this: is that the tackling thing? And we talked about this about high school with someone at Gillette yesterday. Is it just because of the ramp up? Now they had a pretty physical camp, which I was surprised at. But is that just getting into game speed still?
No, that shouldn't be a thing, man. You've had a month of training camp. You've got a game under your belt. No, you look, the reality is once you start the regular season, you can't suck at tackling. You just can't. Every game counts. I don't care who you're playing. If you're a bad tackling team now, you're going to be a bad tackling team in 4 weeks. You're going to be a bad tackling team at the end of the season. They got to get better at it, plain and simple. And I know it's easier said than done to say, well, you got to go back to the drawing board. If you have to do a tackling circuit once a week, do it. If you have to do a pursuit circuit, do it. If you have to do a pursuit drill, do it. The bottom line is defense is all about reading, reacting, and playing fundamentally sound. They're not playing fundamentally sound right now. So they don't want to develop into a bad tackling team. You can fix it, you can improve in that area, but it starts now.
I figured I'd ask. Because you always hear that ramp up does kill teams. I think it might have hurt the Patriots yesterday, honestly. But you're right. You're far enough in now. And it wasn't bad against Fordham. I know it's Fordham, but I think that was just a bad night overall. I don't think they're a bad tackling team. They work on it in practice. It's not like they don't. But maybe you do it more. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to. There's no other way around it. Well,
do we have to?
I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to get our good friend Ryan Barry's thoughts on the college football preview show on Wednesday night. UMass losing on a last-second field goal to Bryant kicker Bryce Soley, beating the Minutemen at the buzzer. I don't know what to say anymore. I mean, look, we knew.
There's nothing to say.
I mean, we're going to have to say something because we're a football show in New England. But coming into the season, I thought 4 weeks in, this UMass football program is going to be 2-2. And listen, we cover Bryant. Bryant's one of our 17 Division I college programs we cover. We're all big fans of Chris Merritt, one of the best people you're going to deal with in this business. He's great. We really like the staff down there. I've gotten to know those guys covering Bryant as part of my camp visits in the spring and in the summer. So part of me is happy for them because it's their first ever win against an FBS opponent. And then there's another part of me that's like, where do you go from here if you're UMass? What do you do? I shudder to think how Joe Harrisimiak is feeling right now because he's got to be thinking to himself, look, I'm a pretty damn good coach. I assembled a pretty damn good staff. And we're losing to an FCS school on a last-second kick. What the frig is going on here? I mean, he has to be frustrated. And now you got Iowa and Missouri on the horizon. So I feel for him, man. I really do. They should be 2-0 right now, Kevin. I really believe it. No disrespect to Temple. No disrespect to Casey Keeler. Terrific coach. I thought that they could beat them. And I thought for sure that they would win this week.
It's funny. I thought about this all day because I knew we were going to talk about it, obviously. And part of me just wanted to, talk about Bryant because they deserve it. You mentioned Merritt. You mentioned, and we talked about this last week. I thought they might win that game. I think we both did. So it wasn't truly shocking until you saw it, right? Like you figured, okay, UMass is eventually going to win, even though Bryant could give them a game. It's not really going to happen. And then all of a sudden it happened. I don't know what to say that we haven't said already. Like you're right. What do you do? And I think I saw today UMass had their regular media availability, and I think a lot of starters are sitting against Iowa. Which I might have read it wrong, but I think I saw the quarterback Brandon Rose it's going to be out, and I know he was pulled the other day. But what do you do in practice? Like, do you completely change everything around? But I know football players are creatures of habit, so you can't do that because you can't become a different, person as a head coach. So he's in a no-win spot right now. Well, literally and figuratively, but they're obviously going to get blown out this weekend. That is what it is. But
I don't know. Iowa has struggled offensively.
That's true.
Do I think they win? No. Do I think they still probably lose by 3 scores? Probably. But Iowa has sucked offensively. So I'm not so sure that it's a fait accompli that they get blown out.
So if they lose 35-10 as opposed to 56-0, I think we'd be okay with it, right? Like at least it'd be a win in a life.
Okay with anything. I mean, we're not the ones that are busting our ass during the week trying to earn a win. I mean,
true.
Yeah. For us.
No, that's true. But Look, it's a problem, or it's a big deal or an issue when it's being talked about in the Gillette Stadium press box yesterday morning. Like, that was the talk of pregame was Bryant beating UMass. So I feel bad for a lot of people there. And I know people will continue to say they should have never gone to FBS. That's not changing. There's no
Well,
way.
it's not, because the reality is you can't go back to the FCS level. I
Correct.
mean, you can, but the money's not going to be there. And you've invested too much money now into
Yep.
being an FBS program, and you're in a conference. We've seen it with UConn, right?
That's the
UConn
biggest thing.
can't get into a conference.
Yeah.
UMass is in a conference, so you're not going backwards here. Look, it's simple. UMass fans, you got to continue to be patient. It's simple. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You brought back Don Brown. You gave him 3 years. Your athletic director didn't want to give him another year. He got impatient. The pressure was on. You go out and you get your guy. They targeted Harris Simiak. He was their guy, and he was the right guy. He was a great hire. Now you got to give him time. We can't. I don't want to hear stupid nonsense about his job security and is he the guy and all that. Just stop. This program hasn't been good for a long time. Let's not sit here and pretend like he's sitting on a gold mine here. They have a lot of work to do. You're going to have to be patient again this year. Sorry, it's just the way it is. I don't know what people's expectations were, but they need to be tempered. I've tempered mine. I had higher expectations. I've already admitted that I'm eating the crap sandwich.
Yeah, you're
I've
right.
tempered mine. I think people should follow my lead and temper theirs when it comes to this UMass program.
I think you were off the bandwagon last week, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, I scraped the hell out of my knees jumping off of it.
And so
Tumbling off and rolling down the street.
just to add salt to the wound real quick too.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that
nobody had salt to the wound quite like you, my friend.
Brian got got $325,000 for that game.
Yeah.
UMass has enough problems as it is getting talent, and especially NIL money. That does not help matters either. I didn't realize that. I figured local matchups might not be worth the same amount of money. I was very wrong. So that makes things a lot worse too. Look, we'll see what happens.
Hey,
I'm
listen,
gonna
Tarleton State beat Army last week. They
Yep.
got, I think, like 400,000. Like,
yeah.
it's going to happen, man. Look, it's going to happen more and more now because the gap between not so much Power 4 schools, as we've seen the last 2 weeks, Power 4 schools are blowing these FCS schools out of the water. They're beating them by 50, 60 points. But the gap between those group of 4 schools and the FCS schools is much narrower, especially because of the portal. Good players are leaving group of 4 schools to go play in FCS schools. So as long as that's happening, you're going to see those upsets between those group of 5 schools and those FCS programs. You're going to see that. It's going to happen.
Yeah, no, but for UMass to lose that money in the game when they desperately need the money, that's just icing on the cake for that fan base.
Yeah, and speaking of them needing money, to your point, Bill checks back in. Problem at UMass for half a century is lack of administrative support at the state level. Bingo, there you go. You made the move to FBS, but the support from the state and the university is not what it needs to be for you to be successful at the FBS level. I'm going to say it again. You need an indoor facility. The giant balloon doesn't cut it, okay?
With the wind tunnel.
Right. You need an actual facility. That would be a good starting point. You need to put more money into your athletic department, especially football, okay? But people are going to counter that and say, but they put a lot of money into football already. How much more money do you want them to put into football? They put millions into it. How much more do you want? That's a valid point. And really, if you're the state, though, we got to look at this objectively. I think they spend what? I could be way off on this, but I'm pretty sure I was recently told, I think that their football budget's about $12 million. Okay. If you, and again, I could be way off on that. If I am, feel free to chime in and tell me that I'm an idiot and that's way off. But for me, the way I look at it is if you're the state, right, you're looking at this objectively and you're saying to yourself, okay, let's say hypothetically that number is 12 million. Again, that's what I heard. If you're the state, you're looking at this and saying, we're pumping millions of dollars into a program that plays in the MAC. No disrespect to the MAC, but it's not like you're in the SEC or the ACC or the Big 12 or the Big 10 where you have a mega TV deal and everybody's getting a piece of that pie. That's not the case. You have a TV deal with the MAC, and it's a good one, but it's not that. So it's hard for the state to look at this objectively and say, okay, what is the ROI here? If we invest in UMass football, what's the return on investment going to be? And then, of course, the other part of it is, and this is always an issue for state universities and programs that are funded by the state, if you're overfunding those programs, unless you're Alabama, where the people want you to fund the program because they give a shit, unless you're Alabama, at the end of the day, most people in Massachusetts probably don't want the state overfunding the UMass athletic department at any of the UMass schools. So there's that part of it as well. And again, I'm not saying that the lack of support isn't a problem or hasn't been a problem, because it has, but there's also a fine line here, right? It's a slippery slope to sit here and to say, well, they got to fund us more. Well, if in fact they're spending $12 million either on football or even the entire budget of the athletic department, that's a lot of money. So again, don't quote me on that number. I thought I heard that. I could be way off. We'll see. Speaking of UConn, we talked about them. Tough overtime loss to Syracuse. You talk about a game that they should have won. UConn dominated that game for 3 quarters and the majority of the fourth quarter. End up on the losing end of a 27-20 overtime loss. Tough loss for the Huskies, man, because they outplayed Syracuse and they deserve better.
Yeah, and we always say there's no moral losses or anything like that. But if they were going to lose, I know we're both high on them, right? Like we have them at 8-9 wins ish, something like that. This was
And by the
one
way,
game.
not to cut you off, Stone.
Yeah.
I can confirm it is $12 million.
Okay.
And by the way, UMass's endowment is over $1 billion. Like,
No comment.
that's pretty damn impressive. I mean, if your endowment is over $1 billion, maybe you can argue spending $12 million on football. Maybe they should be spending 20. I don't know, but that's a pretty big endowment.
They're going to get some MAC money too out of that TV deal.
Yeah.
So that's going to be taken into consideration. But on UConn, yeah, you want to win that game, and recruiting wise, it would have been huge, just Northeast rivalry wise. But they weren't going to go undefeated, so I'm okay with them. Again, you don't have moral losses, but if we still think that the team we think they are, and they're an 8-9, maybe a 10-win team, that's a game I didn't expect them to fully win. So it's good to see that they were in control of the way they were. You got to close it out, and Jim Mora will talk a little bit more tomorrow during their regular availability. But again, it's hard to come away with that one too disappointed. I think if you're a UConn fan, because that wasn't a game they were not necessarily supposed to win.
Oh, I disagree. And I'll tell you why I disagree. Because I don't think Syracuse is as good as people thought they were going to be.
That's fair.
And I think the other thing is, Kevin, I think if we're going to talk about raising the bar and having a higher standard for this program, and that's Jim Mora's expectation, yeah, you got to win this game. And you got to win this game. Listen, you can make your argument going into it, but given the way they played and they dominated that game for 3.5 quarters, you have got to win this game. You have the people to beat a Syracuse. You do. Skylar Bell was arguably the best player in that field on Saturday. He was a dude down the stretch. He played a big part in them getting the game into overtime after they fell behind 20-17. So at the end of the day, in my opinion, yeah, this is a game you got to win. Your defense played lights out for 3 quarters. Your offense could have been better, but they did enough for you to give yourself a chance to win it. The bottom line is they fell apart down the stretch, and these are games that UConn is going to need to win in order to take that next step as a program. And by the way, conferences are watching. You beat a Syracuse, that's a nice feather in your cap.
Let me ask you this real quick. Fran Brown having his team run sprints after that game, is that disrespectful to UConn? Because I took it that way.
No, I just think it's idiotic and stupid. In this day and age, it's stupid and it's a waste of time. He's trying too hard. He needs to pump the brakes on the old school coach routine. Look, you can be pissed at your team not playing well. You can make them run sprints at practice, but making them run sprints after the game, that used to be high school shit. That's not even high school shit anymore. That's Pop Warner-ish. Like, enough. What's next? They're going to walk off the field and they're going to go over to the concession stand and have leftover cheeseburgers and hot dogs. Come on, Fran Brown, knock it off. You better.
Orange slices.
Yeah, but those are reserved for halftime. You don't need orange slices after the game. See, I've known all along. I've paired up with a non-athlete who doesn't get it. Remember that
That's
time
not
you told
true.
me you lifted in high school? Good times.
First of all, I played lacrosse and golf, so let's.
So you played nothing in the fall
Wow,
anyway. Lacrosse is a real sport. You did nothing in the fall. Realistically, I mean, look, I'm not a golf guy. Okay, so I'm perfectly willing to shit on golf, and I know our president loves it, and I know other presidents have loved it. I mean, golf is a recreational thing for me. I mean, kids that quit other sports to play golf piss me off because golf to me, it's a sport, but is it an important high school sport? I, 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 I have my reservations. Let's put it
important.
that way.
No, I'll agree with you there. It's awesome, but well, let's move on.
I mean, is there any truth to the rumor you were being recruited to be the starting middle linebacker for the Waltham Hawks?
No, God, no.
Okay, I didn't think so. I knew that was a tall tale,
I was a goose.
but nonetheless, Stoney, we will move forward here. Some other news and notes from around the college football world for week 2. URI improves to 2-0. The big win over Stony Brook. Devin Farrell's the real deal, man. He's had a really good year for them so far.
They're now 5th in the country. I believe it's the highest ranked team that we've covered since we started doing this. And look, we talked a lot at the beginning of the year or the preseason about how much they were talking about national championship. And I think we both found it surprising that a Jim Fleming team would openly talk. Look, you want your team to have high expectations, but to say the words national championship, that takes balls because you now have a target on your back, and they already did it as CAA champs. They're backing it up. And I know it's only 2 games, but they could make a legitimate run here,
They can.
um,
They
which is
can. I think
crazy
that
to
the
think.
hard thing for the CAA is it's when you
That's the problem. It's a
it
CAA.
it's this right. What the problem though for the CAA schools is and we've seen this with JMU in the past. We've seen this with William and Mary. We've seen this with Villanova. It's when you start playing the North Dakota states
Yep.
and the North
Montana
Dakotas
State.
and Montana State and South
Yes.
Dakota State. When you start playing those schools that have a fair amount of FBS caliber talent on their roster, that's what makes it hard. It becomes a matchup issue, and then you got to go out there and you got to play, in their indoor place in December, and it's a different
Well,
animal. So it's
that's
easy to say we think we're national championship worthy, but it's harder to get that done than we think.
so totally agree, but that's where the top 5 thing comes into play. Because if you're sitting at home and hosting, 2 or 3 rounds, well, then that changes everything, right? Like you're not going out there until the semifinals, then the championship game is a neutral site. So if they maintain this level and they're a top 4 seed, which is really hard to do in that bracket, well, I think it's a game changer. We're so far away from that point, obviously, and they have to get through the CAA, which is never easy. But um, that whole national championship thing, we might be talking about it all season long.
Yeah, and of course they got a big one this week. They traveled to Holy Cross on Saturday. Crusaders fall to 0-2 on the season after a hard-fought loss to UNH. UNH improves to 2-0 on the season after their 1916 win over Holy Cross. So on the one hand, you look at Holy Cross and you say to yourself, the Crusaders could very easily be 2-0. On the other hand, the beat goes on for UNH. I mean, the program has gotten to a point now, Kevin, where it runs itself. Ricky Santos has done such a really good job there. We've talked about that all summer. They had to replace a lot of good football players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but really on either side of the ball. A lot of talent walked out the door there. They just don't miss a beat. Big win for them. They're now 2-0. They go to Ball State on Saturday, as I mentioned. Holy Cross opens their season at home and Fitton Field against URI, the number 5 team in the country. But there's not enough you could say about this UNH program, which, by the way, they are now 24th in the country in the latest top 25 poll in the FCS ranks.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna say that's another team, top 25. If URI doesn't win the CAA, it could very well be UNH again. And we always say it's arguably the most competitive FCS conference in the country. It's loaded every year, and UNH is always in that discussion. I don't know how they do it. We talked about Rick Santos, you know, preseason saying there's a lot of questions here, but you never hear him say that. Well, they're answering them every week still. I know it's only 2 weeks, but they went on special teams. They have a tough defense. They're finding ways to score points on offense. Give credit to Holy Cross too. They're going to be in every game. Dan Curran's team just physical. They're tough. Again, another good defensive team. They're going to be in a lot of close, low scoring games. I think this year. Now I say that, and it'll be a shootout against URI. But man, UNH is so impressive, and I keep talking about 16 playoff appearances in 20 years, but that type of win against Holy Cross is why you said it. Their program runs itself.
Yeah.
Like week in and week out, they're going to be in every game, no matter who it's against, no matter where it is.
Speaking of teams that could very easily be 2-0, but more than likely 1-1, Maine loses a heartbreaker to William and Mary 28-27. I have a real issue with this loss. I don't think it's fair that they had to take on two different people. I'm kidding. But nonetheless, they're 0-2. And if you're Jordan Stevens, I know that one was bad.
No,
If
I didn't get it.
William and Mary, it's
yeah, it took me a minute.
Okay.
Long day.
I'm sure that's what it is. Nonetheless, I kid, of course. Nonetheless, they're 0-2, but they went toe-to-toe with Liberty. That game was 7-7 going into the fourth quarter last week. They ended up giving up 3 scores, ran out of gas, lose 28-7. This week they lose 28-27. Again, another program that at the very least probably should be 1-1 right now.
This is the same type of loss for me as the UConn one is for you. They were up late in this game. I think they were up in the fourth. I'm pretty sure William and Mary scored 4-ish minutes to go. That's a game. If Maine wants to take that next step, you got to win. You have to close it out, especially a league game. Now, again, it's encouraging because they're playing good teams, very, very tough. And again, the CAA is very, very good. But if Maine wants to take that next step and legitimately be in contention for that CAA conference title, you have to close that game out. Have to. I know they're on the road and all that, but that has to be a win. They won 5 games last year. That's a game that might be a difference between a 500 team and sub 500 this year.
Looking at the FCS independent ranks, Merrimack beats St. A's 31-6, and Lehigh beats Sacred Heart 28-10. So Pios fall to 1-1. They got a big one this week. They take on Long Island, who beat Eastern Michigan last week 28-23. So impressive win there for the Sharks. Going over to the NEC, Stonehill played tough, hung in there with Lafayette, but in the end the cream rose there. Lafayette wins 42-26. Good offensive performance for Eli Gardner. Skyhawks, unfortunately, the defense was not very good. New Haven gets pounded by Mercyhurst 48-14. Tough loss for the Chargers. I mean, they played pretty competitive the week before against Marist. Not the case this time around. They dropped to 0-2. So they lost there. Of course, the Ivy Leagues, they're going to kick off in a couple weeks here, or actually next weekend they kick off, not this weekend, but the weekend after. So we'll have Ivy League football as well. So good slate of college games this week. BC is going to be at Stanford. That's a late night game. But overall, you got, like we mentioned, you got Holy Cross URI. Brian comes back home for their home opener to take on Bentley in their home opener. And then, of course, you got UConn, who goes to Delaware this week. That's going to be a tough game. Blue Hens in their first year as an FBS program. They should have their hands full there. So good slate of games, an interesting slate of games, if nothing else.
Yeah, that the URI Holy Cross game is the game of the week here. Maybe one of the games of the week in all of FCS.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. I know you've been a Fit and Field. Fit and Field is one of the best overall college football atmospheres in New England. So that should be an awesome one out there in Worcester.
And shifting gears here before we wrap it up, we do want to talk a little bit of high school football. Week 1 of the high school football season kicked off in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. Connecticut kicks off this weekend. We're excited for that. Great games here in Massachusetts. Of course, you were at the game of the week. Springfield Central at St. John's Prep. St. John's Prep prevailing 36-35. What a game, man. And look, Springfield Central probably should have won the game. They deserve better. They played well for 3 quarters, but we talk about this all the time in the football world. It's all about how you finish. They couldn't finish. Big win for St. John's Prep to start the season at 1-0.
It's not often that you get, a marquee matchup that lives up to the hype, right? This was everything that people thought it would be, and then some. Standing room only crowd. I know you were coaching King Philip. Beautiful night for a game. Just awesome shootout back and forth. Two fantastic quarterbacks, both who have a lot of national attention already. It even had a blocked field goal where one team, St. John's Prep, was already in the locker room, which before halftime. Um, Whistle was never blown dead. About 30 seconds later, everybody's standing around. Springfield Central picks it up, walks it in for a touchdown just before halftime. Killer for momentum against St. John's Prep. They fight all the way back down to 11 in the fourth quarter, get a touchdown with 6 seconds left. Brian St. Pierre goes for two. They get it. Just a wild high school football game and a great way to start the year. Prep is an entirely new offensive line, and somehow, and we talked about this yesterday, Springfield Central is full of dudes. They have some massive kids up front and a lot of talent and speed all over the place. The St. John's Prep offensive line had their way with the D line of Springfield Central. They gashed them on the ground all night long. That Prep team is going to be for real. Springfield Central is going to be really, really good too. They're going to outscore a lot of teams, but it's hard not to be impressed with that offensive line at St. John's Prep, and we all know the skill they have all over the place. So for any people that were kind of doubting if St. John's Prep was still in that top tier, they certainly are.
No, absolutely. They're going to be a player in Division One. I don't care what anybody says. I know that a lot of people think that Xaverian is almost a foregone conclusion of three-peat, but if that game was an indication, Division One, especially at the top, will once again be highly, highly competitive. Big weekend for Rhode Island high school football, by the way. LaSalle comes up to Boston and beats BC High 22-15. Dan Copen's Rams improved to 2-0 on the season. That comes on the heels of a 28-27 win against a pretty good Chaminade team out of New York. LaSalle is for real. Say what you will about the Rams. They've got a really talented skill group, but Copen's got them believing. He's got them buying in. They have good numbers. For them to be able to come up here and beat that BC High team, that's a pretty big win for them.
And I love it. You have the old NFL, old former player mentality. He was not happy after the game. You come all the way up here, you get that road win, great bus ride home. Nope, not happy. I love it.
Yeah.
That's going to be good for that team, too.
And as I mentioned, Rhode Island had a good weekend in Massachusetts. Wesley almost beat Scituate Friday night. Sailors hang on for a 33-29 win. Landon Husero throws for over 300 yards. He's Wesley's quarterback. He's a dude. He's one of the best signal callers in New England. The Bulldogs acquitted themselves well. Look, you know what? It's week one, and I think oftentimes people will say, well, it takes you a little bit of time to get going and get your bearings about yourself. But I think at the end of the day, I think if you're Westerly and you're that coaching staff, you have to be very pleased with how the Bulldogs played, going toe-to-toe with a very good Scituate team, the Division IV defending champs. You can't – I mean, again, say what you will. And I spoke to Herb Devine after the game, and, Coach Devine said it best. He said, look, you know what? They were really well coached. They were skilled. They didn't have big numbers, but they were good up front. They were skilled. He praised Landon, said he played lights out. They made a couple big plays on special teams. Special teams kind of went back and forth in the game. But from Scituate's perspective, you know what? You needed this. This is good for them because, especially going into Duxbury this week, the rivalry game, you needed that kind of so-called wake-up call, if you will. And speaking of Scituate, Coach Cadris checks in. Ryan Cadris, great game, good player. Coach, thanks for checking in. And by the way, Coach, we appreciate all the help as well with helping us get that game story up. Thank you again for providing us with the information, and thank you to Coach Devine for taking the time to talk to us after the game. Speaking of out-of-state matchups, Nashua South beating Malden Catholic 36-25. Big win for Nashua South. And again, New Hampshire in recent years has had success against Massachusetts as well. Londonderry beating Chelmsford. Pinkerton beating Andover. Pinkerton through the years would play Brockton. They'd beat them. I mean, again, Massachusetts has kind of sort of become the preeminent football state in the region, but Rhode Island and New Hampshire have had some success against them. Obviously, some other games real quick that caught our attention. Leominster, impressive win over St. John Shrewsbury. Osiris Lopez and company off and running. North Attleboro with an impressive win over Brockton, 42-7. The Red Rocketeers host King Philip on Friday night. King Philip beating Walpole 21-0. You had some other games as well that caught our attention. Bishop Hendricken down in Rhode Island beating North Kingstown 12-3. Hendricken can win any which way. They can line up and win a slugfest like that and win with their defense and running game, or if they need to, they can win by airing it out and playing a more open style of game. It's going to be interesting to see this week. They go down to Killingly to take on Chad Neal's Killingly squad. Of course, they won the state title going undefeated last year down in Connecticut in their class. Big matchup. We're going to have that game covered for you, but it's going to be a really good test for Hendricken, and it's going to be a really good test for Killingly. And as I mentioned earlier, of course, Connecticut kicks off their season this weekend as well. Plenty of high school football coverage coming your way this weekend, so make sure you follow along, and we'll let you know where we're going to be this weekend. All right, Stone, final thoughts here before we wrap it up, and boy, did we go late. We started late, though, so it's okay.
It's the college talk. It always gets us. But yeah, just a shout out real quick to my alma mater. New England College, Division III school, just played their first home football game in 51 years. I would have killed for them to have a program when I was there 20 years ago. But they lost to Plymouth State, but it's awesome to have football back up in Henniker, and I'd love to get up to a game sometime soon. But shout out to them and shout out to that program for finally having football again.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good stuff, and congratulations to them. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week. Until then, stay safe, and as always, get out there and catch some football. Peace.
See ya.